hello and good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, maybe, depending on where you're watching us. And welcome to another Neo4j Live. Today, Neo4j VS Code Extension, together with Adam Cowley. Hi, Adam. How's it going?
Hello. Good morning, evening, afternoon. How are you, Alex?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm very good. Looking forward to this session that brings a little joy to this, at least where I am, gloomy day. It almost feels like it's November again. I don't know. it was spring yesterday. I don't know what happened.
I can promise everyone's going to feel nice and warm and fuzzy after this demo.
That's good. That's very good. So before we dive in, maybe we should say a few words about who you are, Adam. I think you've been here a couple of times on the stream, showcasing a few things. So people might remember you, but you are the man behind the Neo4j Graph Academy. But you do other stuff. Maybe, I don't know. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So for anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Adam. I look after Graph Academy, like Alex said. It's not just my effort. We also have Elaine on the team who looks after Graph Academy with me. But yeah, my day job is basically to educate Neo4j users and to make sure that everyone has got all of the knowledge at their fingertips to be successful with Neo4j.
Yeah. That's very good. And speaking of which, maybe I use this opportunity to let you all know that we will be running a series of hands-on events. So anytime you can, obviously, explore Graph Academy. So it's a really cool solution to do pace on your own pacing. Do a couple of courses. Adam adds new trainings, new sessions, no lessons rather. Almost every couple of weeks, so it's a really nice curriculum there. So you can depending on beginner stadium, learn how to work with a data model and the graph, how to write your first Cypher queries, to more advanced stuff around GraphQL. I think something is coming up, and other things like Node.js and the versus drivers, how to connect Neo4j and these together. So it's really universal. And where do I wanted to go with this? Oh yes, the training series. So we are hosting a couple of hands-on sessions that are more bespoke, I would say, starting in March. So in a couple of weeks, with an intro session that Michael's doing. Adam will do an intermediate Cypher. That's a little bit of a mix of some Graph Academy courses, and we do with Will together a routing application, how to build that, and then in April we do something about Spring Data Neo4j. So if that sounds interesting to you, then I post a link in chat as well as into the video description. So please register for these events. They should be interesting. They should be very, very great for learners and for beginners alike, as well as for experienced users to get something out of them. So I'm looking forward to them. I think they should be fun.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, looking forward to mine. I've still got to come up with what we're actually going to do. So if anyone's got any suggestions or anything that they would like to see in a more advanced like Cypher workshop, then give me a shout, and I might even include it in my in my session.
Yeah, it is always interesting always interesting. I think, especially when with these sessions that are online, you don't get maybe I start again. So when you work on these sessions for Graph Academy, I guess you work on them, you think they work well, they have their flow, and you see that the people are using them, people are completing them. You get that statistical feedback, but you don't get an immediate feedback or a user feedback from somebody who's doing it, somebody who has completed the course and says, hey, I have challenges with this or that questions, or I find this too easy, I find this too hard, I found this was great for me, this was perfectly spot on, I just needed this for what I'm doing. Or maybe, hey, next time could we do this or that, because this is what I'm currently looking at, or this is what I'm working with. So this is, I guess, not there, but this hands-on workshop gives that opportunity. So it's always great to do some exchange, some idea feedback and close the loop.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So one of the things I miss from teaching people in real life is that you don't get that instant feedback, and you can't kind of. So one of the things that I liked to do when I was teaching people is we had these set decks that it'd be like 5 days worth of training. There'd be one on introduction to Neo4j would be Monday morning. Then we'd look at Cypher, and then we'd look at administration and things like that. One of the things that I enjoyed doing was actually looking at the people and seeing like at the point where their eyes glazed over, because it just wasn't the stuff they were interested in at the time. So you could see like the database administrators only cared about just how to install Neo4j and how to change the ports and harden the Neo4j instance. Looking at these Cypher queries and thinking, I'm never going to need to know this, and then you just go to checking their emails. So yeah, it's definitely good. We make a lot of assumptions when we build our courses as to what a user might want. So partly data-driven approach, but yeah, I mean, if there's something that's missing from a course, we don't really find out for a couple of months really, until people start to fill in the feedback boxes, and then if someone will come back and they'll say, there's missing information from this course. Okay, so then we have to find out what's missing, or we try and guess what's missing from a particular course or lesson. So yeah, it's kind of difficult. So yeah, it's good to have that instant feedback for sure.
Yeah. Cool. We have instant feedback today, obviously, because we're live. And so if you join us live on any channel, please let us know in the comments in the video live chat, any questions, any feedback, any other, get it out of your system, get it off your chest. If you have to rant, let us participate. Everything goes basically. But yeah, today we look at the VS Code extension that you wrote, Adam. I think Michael is to blame for that one. What was the story behind it?
Well, it's kind of two or threefold really. So I started working on something just as an experiment. I think about 2 years or so ago. And I thought other people have got these extensions. It'd be interesting to see how they work and create one. So I got to the point where I had like a kind of like the file tree in VS Code. I had the left hand side where I had like a list of databases and things like that. And I thought, okay, this is kind of cool, but I don't really want to maintain it. So it kind of stayed there for a few years. And then it sort of got to the end of last year. Round about Christmas time, we're talking, 4 or 5 days before taking the winter holiday, and I didn't really want to start anything new. Don't want to start a new course, and I was kind of thinking, what can I what can I work on? What can I do? It's kind of like a small self-contained experiment. Anyway, got a message from one of my colleagues in the field team in Neo4j saying, "Oh, you've seen this repository? Like we're looking at VS Code extensions and things like that. What's the is this maintained? Should I be installing it? Should I be using it?" And I thought, well, I said to him, "No, you shouldn't be using it because I've not touched it in years." So that anyway, that kind of sparked a bit of a conversation with Michael, and then I think Michael's got a good way of tricking me into working on things by getting me excited about things. So yeah, we had a quick chat about it, and then all of a sudden version 0.1 was up on the marketplace, and yeah, things have kind of snowballed from there really.
That's good. Yeah. That's Michael in a nutshell. I think he's excited, and you get excited, and you all of a sudden you say, "Yeah, let's do it," and then you realize, "Oh, man, now I do it."
Yeah, this is a lot more work than Michael made out to be.
All right. Shall we dive in?
Yeah, sure.
I think I see your screen. I'm not sure. I see a gray circle. I can try to edit. It's audio only. I don't see an image.
Okay. So while we're sorting this out, so one of the motivations behind this was I was working on a project where I was basically having to look at like JSON data. So I was trying to import JSON data into Neo4j, and I basically like the data was so inconsistent. I had to keep doing like all these different like write these different queries, modifying queries in order to get the data right. And then you do like a merge on something that has a null value as part of it, and then something goes wrong in this huge Cypher statement, and there's not a lot that you can do about it to debug it. And then we got this problem. So I normally work with like Neo4j browser, but that has a history limit. So I found myself like writing in Visual, VS Code, which is my editor of choice, and then like kind of like switching back in to run the query. And I was kind of just getting tired with that. And I thought, well, actually, if I did write this extension and there was a way to execute like Cypher statements inside Neo4j, it'd be a massive help for me. So it's really a completely selfish task that I put this together. This is completely features that that I'd like to have myself.
But I would assume that most people would have the same problem or the same they see the same challenge. So I think it's very much applicable to anybody. I asked initially who here in chat is using VS Code with Cypher and with Neo4j, and who maybe have used the extension already. I got some feedback. So Simon, for example, said he's using Neo4j with VS Code, but hasn't tried the extension. And a couple of people, I guess, wanted to know how to get it to work. Here, Paul, for example, asks, "I'm running the VS Code Insider." I guess we get to it, but he asks, running the VS Code Insider version, is it still working, or does he have to switch back to regular? I guess we show how it's installed and everything. But yeah, a couple of people are interested, so it's I think you're not the only one with this challenge initially.
Yeah, good. Yeah, that's kind of the thing I find with a lot of the projects that I do is I do them because I need them, and then other people just seem to be like find it useful as well. And that for me that's the bonus, because I'm helping people as I'm doing something that I enjoy, which is a really good thing. But yeah, so I should have my screen on.
I see a screen. Currently, I see would see ourselves, so I can switch it over anytime you change the view, maybe to something else that's not us.
Okay. Oh, is it sharing the?
It's sharing the studio tab basically.
Ah, okay. Oh, so we can cut this bit out of the YouTube version, right?
Yes.
Edit that down. Perfect.
Yeah. That's no problem.
Let me try this one again. Entire screen. There we go.
Yes, this looks good.
All right. Cool. Yeah, so in terms of installation of this, I'm not quite sure what the insider version of VS Code is, but I'm hoping that you can install it anyway, Paul. But yeah, so there's kind of two ways that you can install it. So you can either go through the VS Code marketplace. I think it's a marketplace. This. Marketplace.visualstudio.com. Or you can just go to the this one here, which is the extensions panel. Search for Neo4j, and hopefully it should be the top one. So it's the one with the Neo4j logo. There, and just click, and then click install, and then hopefully off you go. You should be good there. And yeah, Alex, thanks for sharing the link there. So yeah, that's it. So once you install the extension, you should get this Neo4j logo in the sidebar, left hand side. So if you click that, you can kind of see two things here. So database and parameters. So what the extension allows you to do is to share, maintain, manage multiple connections, and then also the parameters that you're going to run inside a query as well. I don't have a local Neo4j instance running, so I'll start one of those now. But yeah, so the idea is wherever your Neo4j instance lives, whether it's a local one in desktop, something running through Docker, Neo4j or instance or other, then you should be able to connect to it. So the VS Code extensions themselves are written in TypeScript. So there's just you just use the Neo4j JavaScript driver underneath that.
Okay. John Dag comments and says he's not able to see the window to add the database connection. Is there something I'm supposed to do to have access? Is there anything that should have happened? Maybe restart VS Code? Is that something you would have to do?
Yeah, so as long as it is installed and enabled, then that should be enough to add the Neo4j window. You may have to kind of like, if you've got lots of extensions, you may have to sort of right-click to view it, but you should kind of see it there in the list.
Yeah. Okay.
So fingers crossed that that should be enough. But yeah, so once I get this, not 100% sure what's in this database, but we'll start it anyway. If from like a cold start, you'll get this button to add a database connection, or you can add an Aura instance. But what you can do is open the command palette. So Command Shift and P on a Mac, and I think it may be Control Shift and P on Windows, but not 100% sure. If you start typing Neo4j, then you'll see the list of the procedures that we can use there. So we can add a connection, and this is kind of like the verbose version. So this will ask you for everything that you need, well, everything that it needs to connect. So we'd first choose a scheme. So depending on whether you're on a local version with no security, or if you're using Aura, you choose a different scheme. So I'm just going to choose Neo4j now. I'm going to connect to the database at localhost. Port is 7687. Username is Neo4j, and then my password is a secret. You can enter the database as well if you want to connect to the non-default database. And then once that's added,
that's good.
You'll get the list here, which is nice. So there's a shortcut for adding the local database, because I found that I was typing in all of that stuff too many times. So you can just add the local database, and what that does is just a shortcut to say, like, don't fill in Neo4j localhost or 7687, and then the username is Neo4j, so you just put the password, so that'd be Neo, and then it's there. We can also add a database from Aura, so add an Aura connection, and then what this allows you to do is Neo4j. So you can go into a database, and then if it's running, you can copy the URI straight into there. So straight from the collection URI from the console, straight in there, username, and then you set your password as well. So it's kind of a shortcut there. And then, so a brand new feature that I've just written and released this morning. I've just created this new database. You can take down the user details if you want, because it's going to be gone by the end of the stream. But what you can do is when you create a new Neo4j Aura instance, you can click the download button here to get a credentials file. So this will create me a file which I can just open in VS Code. And then if you do the add connection command, with this file open, it will add the database automatically. So it takes all of the URI, the username and password from there, and then adds it in. So now you can see there's two databases there. This my local one, and then the F35 one.
That's neat. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was another thing that I was getting frustrated of having to keep doing this thing over and over again. And it also works as well if you just got like any configuration file that has Neo4j URI, username and password. So for example, if I'm like developing Graph Academy locally, then I've got all of those details in the .m file, so I can just open that, run it, and then it adds the database. The next thing we need to do is kind of choose our active connection. So when you add a new database, or when you add your first database, it will automatically set it as active. But you can see this kind of star next to the database. This kind of indicates that it's the active database. And then you can also see down in the bottom, there's a database URI there. So that's the indication that that's the active database. So if you click on this URI in the bottom, or if you run set active connection, then you can choose which one you want to run from. And then this will allow you to run a Cypher query against that database. You can also just click straight into the straight in the Explorer there, and then it will set the database for you. And yeah, so then it all comes down to we can start to write Cypher statements.
Cool. That is very easy.
Oh, so if I just do, one thing I'll probably go into more detail a little bit later on, but there's some commonly used code snippets in there. So right now I've got code snippets in there for the languages I use. So again, doing things that make my life easier. But I've got some basic Cypher stuff in there. I've got Node.js, JavaScript, TypeScript, and Python snippets in there. But let's say, for example, I want to do a match. I can start typing match out, then use the snippet to complete it. And then, I don't actually know what's in this database. So if I just do that and then just do my return count in. If I then run the Neo4j run command, so I can choose whether to run this query in a read transaction or a write transaction. The reason for this is basically because I don't want people to delete stuff out of their databases or anything like that without being explicit. So you have to explicitly choose the right one. There's also the shortcut there. So I've used Control, Command, and Space, so I can just hit that to get the to run the query. And then we get the like a pane open up to the right of the active window with the query details. So this is the information that I've sent through. This is the query and the parameters, and this is the result that gets sent back. So right now this is just tabular data. Everything gets converted into a table format. I personally have decided not to put in the graph visualizations because it's a lot of work to do well. And we've got a great tool in Neo4j browser to do that for us. So yeah, this is purely for kind of debugging purposes. Let's not get too complicated with what we're doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how to run a query. So we can also use the multi-cursor as well to run multiple statements. So if I do option and click, we then get two cursors here. And if I highlight both of those and then use my shortcut to run it, it then opens up. So this is the first statement, match n, return count n. and then it's opened up another one as well for match person return count in. So I've got 39 people inside the database. So that's quite nice. You can run multiple things at the same time. You can also do, I'm not sure. What is in there, but so you can just put like, multiple statements in the same Cypher file with a semicolon to split them out and run them, and then they will all be spit out, opened up, and run in their own window. So I've got managers and referees. This is what's in my database apparently. So yeah, so it's run all three of those, which is quite nice.
Very cool.
Cool. Yeah. So the next thing that to show there is the parameter view. So what you can do is add a parameter. So we can set a parameter, set the parameter value, or we can manage them and remove them from the command pane. So if I go to set a parameter, so it's the same format as Neo4j browser. So I can say that let's say the name is Alex, and then it sets the value here. So it's added a new item to the parameter list. And then if I say, for example, set another parameter, I can say that the I don't know, location is Munich. So then now if I run a Cypher statement, it then will append those. So all of these parameters will be sent with every one of the queries that I send.
Yeah.
So you can see the values there.
That's cool.
Yeah, and then so if you want to edit these at any point, you can click, and then it'll set the parameter value. And so one of the things that you can do is, I could say, like, for example, this. Let's say, for example, I can do Munich and Germany. Depending on the data type, it may need some extra hinting as to what that type is. So if I do JSON or objects, what that will allow me to do is to pass that and then convert it into an object or something that can be used inside the Cypher statement itself. So now if I run this query again, I've now got an array of values. So that's the way of dealing with objects inside there. And the other one, so I guess the one gotcha you've got is the difference between integers in Neo4j and JavaScript. So you've got I think 32-bit integers in JavaScript and 64 in Java, and therefore Neo4j. So when you're using an integer, you have to use the equals greater than to set it.
Okay.
And I say that's an integer, so then that'll will get converted. Run that again. Then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, which is an integer.
Then you can basically bounce these values back to the database, and then get the queries back from the database, depending on what your values are.
Yeah, and then we can use those parameters to build up a query. So I could do, like, for example, like a create node statement. So I could say create P, which is a person, with a name of name, and I could say, you could do a merge as well. So think I've done this wrong around. So we've got L, which is a location where the L dot integer. Then we can return everything. So because I've run that in a read transaction, I get this error saying error writing in read access mode.
Yep.
So that means that I can't mess my database up. So if I instead do the run in write transaction,
then it does
I can
it.
run
Yep.
statement, and then we've got P, which is the person with the name of Alex, and then we've got the location of Munich. So that's kind of cool. And then another thing that it will do is it will look through the statement. It will check for all the parameters that you may have missed. So I could say, for example, if I wanted to merge a company with a name of company name,
which is a value we don't have at the moment as a parameter.
So as soon as I run that statement, it's going to ask me for the value for company name because it's not got it in the parameter list. And I can call that Neo4j, which is a string. And then it'll run that statement.
Then it does it directly. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So it's a really nice thing. One of the things that I found when I'm working on projects is I'll have like a big Node.js file or something, and I'll have a Cypher statement in there that's kind of hard to debug. So what this allows me to do is to highlight just a particular section of a file or a Cypher statement which is inside a TypeScript string. Run the commands. It will prompt me to fill in all the details. And then I can just check it from there and check to see that it works, which is really nice. Cool. Yeah. So are there any questions at this point from anybody in the?
There are a couple of questions. So maybe we take them now before we maybe go a little bit more into a couple of the other options. Tariq asks, what are the best features for a developer DBA in what would you say is? I mean, you said why you developed it, I guess, but what is your favorite feature amongst them?
I think for me, it's the benefit for me is being able to run those Cypher statements on a like on the go just by highlighting them. Having like a long file and being able to abstract one piece of one piece of text and then run that as a Cypher statement. I think that's really valuable. It's definitely something that I think is useful. I think the other bit as well is snippets. So I think one thing I might do is as a demo to go through this is to show how quickly a basic like Hello World app can be built using the snippets. So what I'll do is I'll add a new folder. So I'm in this demo folder now, and I'm going to choose Node.js because that's my my language of choice. So obviously take this with a pinch of salt.
Do you mind clicking on hide for where it says streamer?
Yep, sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. So I could just run like npm init Y in this folder. So it's just going to create me a basic Node.js application. So all that does is just creates the package.json file, which is my kind of project manifest, I suppose, with some basic info in there. Basically, everything's hardcode. I don't want to change anything, so I don't care about anything that's in there, so I'm not going to edit the file too much. Next thing I can do is just install Neo4j driver, and then I'll save that in the dependency list. So that's added that there. So I've got Neo4j driver version 5.5.0. So if I create a new file, it's called index.js. Because this is a JavaScript file, I've now got the JavaScript extensions that come with the snippets that come with the extension available. So as soon as I start typing Neo, I should start to get some suggestions. So typically what we do when we work with with any of the drivers is first we would include a dependency. We would then create a driver instance. We then create a session, and then through the session we run Cypher statements through read and write transactions. So if I just hide that for a second, so I can do Neo import to import the driver, and if I do Neo driver, so this gives me the basics, so I can connect to my local host on port 7687, username password, username Neo4j password. So that could be whatever you need it to be. Another thing that I do quite often is I use .m files for my credentials, because it's not really good practice to store that username and password directly in the code. So if I do Neo driver env, so it does the import statement for me there as well. But what it does is it extracts the URI, username, and password from process.env, and then gives me a driver instance with those details included, which is quite nice. And then from there, so if I want to, I guess, like read from the database, I can just do Neo read. And then this gives me everything that I need to basically open the session on the through the driver, execute a Cypher statement in a read transaction in this case, so execute read, and then process the results. So I can say match and return count in. I don't need any parameters there. And I can just console.log. I just process the results, basically. Cool, so if I just do node index.js. And then I follow the errors. And that again, so then I've got my value there.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so I've written a quick statement to read from Neo4j in theory, without me waffling, right? It's
well, it's not. Yeah, it's a couple of seconds exactly.
Yeah, so Neo write, same thing. So I can merge a new person in the database, and then return back the results. So yeah, that's pretty nice. And I guess to go back to the question we had earlier about or my response to the question, where the best thing for me is being able to highlight something inside a project, and then run it against the database. For example, I can just highlight this one piece of code. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to clear all of my parameters. So I just basically removed everything from this bit here. And then now if I run that, so because it's not taken the name as one of the parameters from the file, if I just say, I know, Tom Hanks, that is a string, and then it will run it for me. So I mean, this is kind of a trivial example, but in the let's see if I can find the, if I have the project, but and I haven't graph. All right, here we go. Right, so, oops. Whoa. So if I just open that file up in, oops. This one, and then if I check out branch 15, which has got all the so this is the repository for the Node.js course, and then so inside these service files, it's basically all of the code that connects to the database and does something. So one of the things I like, maybe that's a not the best example there, but what I can do is I can just take this piece here. I can run that query. So my user ID is 1234, which is an integer. The movie Toy Story, let's say, it's a string, and then I can just like test and run that query straight away. So that's really nice.
Yeah, so that's less back and forth between Windows tools, environments.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because like every time you change a screen or you kind of switch context, you it takes like some like cognitive load basically to do it. Like it takes some. I like to think it takes like 10 minutes off your day because you have to refocus and do what you need to do. Whereas if something's gone wrong, there's there's some syntax error or something in this file, I can really quickly, really easily find that. Okay, so that's not a Cypher statement, a valid Cypher clause. So yeah, I think that's definitely my favorite thing.
Yeah. I think that's really cool. Shall we continue questions?
Yeah, sure.
Yep. Lavanya asks, and I think we mentioned this a little bit, but let's go over it again. What happens when you return a graph object in the Cypher inside VS Code? So
I don't know if I've still got that open. So all it does is it turns it into like a JSON representation of what that object would be. So this is a node that's been returned. So we've got the identity there, the element ID, array of labels, and then an array of properties.
Yep.
So yeah, it's just an object with values inside it. Yeah, like I said, like purposely done that way because it's easy to see what you like to see, but the graph visualization is just a whole rabbit hole that I don't really want to go down into. But yeah, this tells you everything that you need to know without giving you the graph representation itself.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And Ashwa asked, I think that's more like a generic Neo4j question. I almost here at your screen, or where it shows, why is it showing after 1 millisecond completed after 23 milliseconds in output statement here, like same here, streaming one record after 220 milliseconds and completed after 130 milliseconds. I think that's the general response from browser anytime you put a query in. So that's That's a Neo4j response.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So like, say for example, if you've got showing after 1 millisecond and completed after 23 milliseconds, what it's saying is that once you start to execute the query, some work happens in the background inside Neo4j to kind of profile the query, check the best way to execute it, and things like that. Once it starts to execute the query and find results, it will start to stream them back. So what it's saying is that after 1 millisecond, the first result has been found, and then the last result was returned after 23 milliseconds.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you showed this, but let's maybe show it again. Tariq asks, can you go over the add ability again when working with highlighted text and executing? How does that work?
Yeah, sure. So you can. So if you've got a full file, you can just run that as it is. But say, I don't know, say for example, you had something that had, let's say, some markdown, which had, this is how you run the query. You don't really want to execute the whole query because that's just going to give you a Cypher statement. Because I guess the H there is the thing that's the problem there. So you can just highlight something and then use the statement to run it. So it's just got.
What was the key shortcut you pressed?
This is Control, Command, and Space for that one.
Okay. Yeah.
Or yeah, Command, Shift, and P. Open up the command palette, and then Neo4j run. Read or write. So like, regardless of which operating system you're using, you'll be able to see what the commands are, and what you got to see what the what the shortcuts are, if there are ones by default, and then you can set your own ones as well.
Yeah.
If necessary. And yeah, so for example, this is positive, this is negative. Return false. So that you may have more than one statement in your file that you want to run. So in which case you can use multi-cursor to execute both of those in their own windows. So there's the false one, and then return true.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah,
if not, then feel free to ask a follow-up. But yeah, the main reason really is, I mean, you could go through and you could go through this this file, and you could highlight, this one, and then you could check this one as well, and you could run them all at the same time to validate that they're all correct and they all work.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Lavanya, another question. If we wrote a complex query with multiple with statements, is there a way to break the code and run between the breakpoints by converting the last line to a return statement? By converting the last line to a return statement. Guess it would be helpful to debug.
Yeah, that would actually be a really cool feature to do. Just maybe a command that did return star. So yeah, I kind of get what you're getting at. So what you're saying is, highlight that one, and then it would just append the return star to the end. So I like that. Yeah. So you can do it at the moment. You have to put in like the return star, write it in yourself, and then highlight it and run it. But I like that. I might end up adding that to the to the extension. That's a good idea.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you very much, Lavanya. That's a good suggestion. That's all the question I can see for now. But again, if you have any other suggestions, any questions, anything else, please let us know. Do you have anything else you'd like to show, Adam?
No, I think that's everything from the from the extension. Yeah, all I would say to close it out is that I'd really appreciate any feedback that anyone can give me on this one. So if you do find the plugin in the marketplace, you can give it a rating. I feel bad for asking this, but you can rate it. We've got 2 ratings at the moment, but any more would be great. And then you can see as well from the repository, if you have any comments, any suggestions, any feedback whatsoever, feel free to open an issue. Or better yet, if there's a bug in there that you want to fix, then feel free to open to fork it and open a pull request.
Yeah. One question I had is when you talk about Cypher snippets, and I don't know if that's possible at all, but maybe in Cypher you can work with autocomplete, and it kind of tabbing through your statements, and it helps you along. But would that be something that is eventually possible with the extension, or not? Or is it too much with the the open connection between the two that has to be running all the time, basically?
Yeah, so it's in the, let's say it's not in the works, it's in the pipeline. So I've had some discussions with some of the teams inside Neo4j as to how we can get this done. So we have auto completion in the browser at the moment. Yep. So in theory, we could provide the same auto completion, but it's working out how we can do that. So using the Cypher snippets, there are ways to build up a Cypher statement, and it's quite rudimentary at the moment. So I can do like a if I do a match clause, I can say P person, and then I can say an outgoing relationship of something to, and then I can just do node. So it's kind of,
but that's already super helpful. You save at least a lot of opening and closing brackets and all of that.
Yeah, it's kind of it's half there, but it's not perfect at the moment. So you can do things like that. I'm trying to think what all of the things are there. But yeah, you can do things like set, and then it gives you the auto completion for that. So it's a unintelligent basically way of it's just shortcuts basically. One of the things I did do, which was kind of painstaking, was to add all of the snippets for things like system commands, like show databases, create constraints, and things like that, because I could never remember these, like the constraints and indexes, like create index. Yeah, and all those sorts of stuff. So it is kind of there. The capabilities there, because we've got the connection. In theory, what we could do is download the database schema, and then we can start to suggest based on context. But that goes a little bit over my 2 days development time that I wanted to spend on it in the first place. So yeah, it's a feature that I would like to add. It's something that we're in discussions about, but I can't really give a time frame at the moment, to be honest.
No, that's not a problem. I think already with the snippets, I think you save a lot of time by saving, like I said, closing, opening brackets, with the creating constraints and all that. It helps you out. At least you don't make any syntax errors, so you just fill in the blank basically. So that's that's I think very helpful for everybody, and maybe at a later point some more features will come around. Where's the best? Paul asks, where's the best place to give you feedback, comments on the extension? Is it the Neo4j community, Twitter, on GitHub directly? Any other sources or any points? Write a review, obviously, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, only write a review if it's a good one, Paul.
Exactly.
Yeah, I would say the GitHub repository for me is a great place. It keeps me honest. It's a public-facing thing that I will get notifications and I'll check quite often. But yeah, I mean, feel free to share your experiences in the community site as well. Catch me on Twitter or Mastodon or wherever people are at the moment, or drop me an email. I'm sure you can guess my email address if you want to go that far. But yeah, and any feedback is welcome in whatever form it comes.
No, I just shared the GitHub link again, again, I'm saying again, but I don't think I shared it before. So there it is. I think that's a good way to go. Another question from Lavanya: does the tool work with GraphQL language? I think it does not. For GraphQL, we have a couple of other options. So there's the toolbox. I think is probably what comes closest to what we have here. Let me see where this is. This is the GraphQL toolbox. Yes, which you can connect to your Neo4j instance and is then available directly to link between GraphQL, or what you will write in the GraphQL API world, and on the database. I think you, Lavanya, you are watching this on LinkedIn. I'll hop over to LinkedIn and post it in the comments as well. But I need to open another browser for that window. This is the chat and synchronization between various streaming tools is not ideal, and LinkedIn particularly does not want anything to happen between obviously what we're streaming here and what I'm writing. So I have to go back there. Adam, there was one, and this is not on topic at all, but maybe we cover it quickly because you are the expert on this. Eshwar asks, how can people download a certificate for completing a Graph Academy course? Is there such a thing?
Yeah. So you get your certificates when you pass a course or certification. So yeah, the best way to do that is to head over to Graph Academy, and then once you're logged in, that will change. But you can go to my account, and then my achievements. This gives you a list of all of the everything that you passed. And then to get the individual one, you click on the badge itself, and it'll be there for you. And then so you can share that URL with others. And then I'd also say recommend. I'd appreciate if you could share it on sites like LinkedIn and places like that as well. There should be a share link at the bottom, but that doesn't seem to be there at the moment, so I'll have to investigate that. But yeah, that's how you get that.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's the end of the stream for today. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching. Thank you very much, Adam, for presenting, for developing this extension. And I think from the comments, I think lots of people have the same, pain points that you have. So I think that's a good audience. If you find this extension valuable, interesting, and helpful, then give it a star rating, give it a thumbs up, and maybe write a review if you can. Otherwise, let Adam know on any feedback you have, requests, or or otherwise. And yeah, I think that's the end for today. In terms of upcoming streams, briefly, Michael and I will be back on Monday morning, Central European time, to talk about another data set on Aura. And on Tuesday, basically same time, 5 p.m. here, European time zone, I will be talking to two lovely people from Intuit, Chad Close and Zach Probst, where we talk about infrastructure mapping together with the Akamai API structure and how to see or how to find out what are open holes in the security setup of companies through that. So that should be interesting as well. That's happening next Tuesday. And yeah, with that, any final words, Adam?
No, head over to graphacademy.neo4j.com and start your learning journey with Neo4j now.
Yeah, as if rehearsed. Perfect. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a lovely rest of your day, lovely evening, and yeah, see you soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Cool. Take care, everyone.